Alright, build video 3, reframing this thing. Last video, we redid the transom with a completely new drop-in transom kit. And obviously this is the first step where there's no point to go through with it. We almost didn't pull it off, but then we did. So here's the framing video. In this video, we take the best parts of this old boat framing and we retrofit it with new stuff to make it better than ever. Much easier than a full restore, let me tell you that. Since this is a budget build series, let me talk to you about a budget spot lock option. This option will bolt on to any transom mount trolling motor, like this Minn Kota Endura. You're probably got one of these lying around your garage. It was how you kicked around your John boat. Now you can turn that thing into a GPS autopilot beast. And then also, don't forget the boat giveaway. Register, please. Like, do it. I mean, are you truly a mentally healthy person if you see a free fishing boat advertised on a legitimate source like this and you still just reject to do it?
Yeah. It's an 18-gallon stamped Livewell with a recess hole down here for a through hole fitting. Perfect drainage every time. And then we're gonna go ahead and kit this thing out.
If your transom and subfloor have gone to plan, the next logical step is framing. If you're going to frame a Livewell, frame that first. In this session, we'll be going back to front. In this 1648 Weekend Warrior kit that we're using to restore this John boat, we include 4 pieces of 1¼ inch square aluminum tubing, 1/16 inch thick. These are what I use to frame the Livewell in initially. For one, because the Livewell is flat on one side and it needs to be mounted to an exact flat surface on the other side for the hatch lid to fit inside the opening. And 2, the tubing is so much stronger, especially when you T-frame it with angle later. The floating weight of the water inside the Livewell will not bend or bow this frame. We're mounting this tubing directly to the side brackets that were previously installed on the boat to keep the back deck in as it was. And we removed the back deck because it just wasn't going to work with the application that we needed. Everything was outdated, but if you're happy with the Livewell and the situation back there, go ahead and keep it and just retrofit the new framing we give you in the kit to improve the overall layout. But if you're going to frame in one of our Livewell systems, the whole framing has to be redone from scratch. We're going to be installing a Fireant through hole elbow fitting into that stamp, and we require 3 inches of comfortable spacing. That way you can not only install it, but if need be, get to it and troubleshoot it later. I stopped the subfloor right there halfway so that the through hole would actually miss the subfloor. The through hole fitting is just past the rib, right there where the subfloor connects, giving me the max clearance I need. If framed correctly, the drop-in hatch should just go right in, but don't secure it yet. Wait till later. In this kit, you will get a 12x30 Livewell lid and also a 12x30 rear hatch. This rear hatch is not the one you will get in the kit. The one you get in the kit will be the exact same size or width as the Livewell, but it'll be 3-sided like this, and the sides will extend out so the back, so you have a vent opening there, and you can just pick up the hatch and lift it at will. The rear facing hatch is very popular and liked amongst people who get these kits. Hey guys, if you're still hanging around with this video and you like the content, please like the video. It helps us trend so the video can get out to people that need it. Alright, now that the Livewell is framed, let's install the components that will make it work.
This is specifically the best through hole fitting you could use for that recess indent. You can go ahead and use a standard one that they have. In fact, it even has a little pop socket there for the screen. But this one actually has a thread that the screen goes on. You see those little grooves between there? That allows you to drain the water. You even have little grooves right here. You can see that right there. And you even have little grooves right there. So as this is all the way in and seated, and this is all the way down, there's still the little bit, so when you want to drain the water, you can. And then if you need a more aggressive flow, you just unscrew this a little bit and the hole down there gets bigger and more water flows through. Now, I know you've all seen the aerator pump out nozzle, the dual one that'll let water in, and then you pull the knob, it'll pump it out. But they also have just a standard one like this, and that's really all you need for a basic kit. It's just one that goes right in from the pump itself. Constant fill, and then there's a constant overflow, and it's just a one-step Livewell.
For best practice, use 3M 5200 to seal all waterproof fittings, like this one. You could use silicone, but silicone actually corrodes the aluminum over time. You can definitely tell, and it also doesn't last as long. I'm going to install all fittings using a unibit drilling into the live well. I want them on each side because we made this so open and symmetrical. A lot of times in advanced layouts, it's really hard to get both the fill nozzle and the overflow fitting separate from each other. But if you can, the separation from each other allows you to flow new water in and push old water out. So when you set your remote valve into auto and the live well is constantly filling, it is constantly pushing water to this overflow fitting and the old water is going right out. I found over time that gutting old boats, the ones that had good layouts on the bottom of the subfloor, the pour foam did not corrode the hull or saturate with water, but in other poor layouts, specifically boats like these, it absolutely did. There's a lot of damage to this hull from corrosion because of saturated pour foam, so I'm making systems to get around that. We'll cover more into that later. If you get the option for the sheet metal pack in the listing for this kit, we include several sheets, a very copious amount of sheets of varied thicknesses that are foot in length and 18 inches wide. With these sheets, not only are you able to piece together a subfloor and make inner walls, but you can also complete the entire deck. We will also demonstrate how to do this later in the series. The easiest and safest way to cut this aluminum is with a 14 gauge electric shear. I broke mine trying to cut 1/8, so now I'm trying to use this pneumatic one, which it's doing the job. I got it from Harbor Freight, but if you just get any cheap generic or name brand 14 gauge electric shear, it cuts all this aluminum perfectly. It may not be the straightest line, but it'll be good enough to get most things done. Toward the end, when you start to put the panels on your deck, if you want those to be perfectly symmetrical, I would recommend a skill saw to cut those. But if the sheet metal is going to sit inside framing like this wall is, then there's no mess, there is no loud noises, there is no crazy saw that can cut off your fingers. It's actually the safest way to do it. So I will always try to use the electric shears or the pneumatic shears in these cases. There are some more advanced tools that I'm missing that would allow me to only cut this once instead of constantly trialing and erroring and cutting it to fit, but whatever, we get it done. Now we have to make the frame that this is going to sit in. We use the 1.5 inch angle included in the kit. We cut out notches with either a bandsaw or those tin snips, and then you can bend it to fit, and we rivet it right to the hull.
Okay, so the subfloor in a John boat, you can do less with versus a V-hull where you can make it elevated and it tapers. You can do more. Generally, all the plumbing runs through down the middle of a V-hull. With a John boat, obviously you got, 1.5 inches of depth, so it's harder. But how we get around that is we just make an elevated subfloor on top of the subfloor. Where it all would actually be, well, actually, we're continuing the subfloor inside this box here. So I cut this notch out, kind of folded it in, just cut it with those little tin snips, and that section is going to go right over the hose, like this, more or less right on here, so it'll get the brace of the actual deal. We'll kind of figure something out here, and this will be the area for the gas tank. For like the Flow-Rite, the ultimate kit that we sell, the premium one, we generally have a forward-facing line, which means if you have this put towards the transom and this way toward the live well, that the cable pulls toward the live well, which means it pulls into the boat, so it's forward-facing. This one does the exact same thing, except for it's rear-facing, so it's going to be facing out that way.
Let's take a closer look into how the live well is actually rigged. We'll go underneath. So we have a floating floor just above the ribs to give us an extra 1.5 inch clearance. We have that braided hose that we bought from the hardware store. If you get the starter kit, you just got to get your own hose and pipe clamps, and it's just as good as the premium kit minus the timer. Remember that we took scrap sheets and we placed them against a live well, so they're not actually bonded to the live well, they're just kind of placed loosely with adhesive, and that allows us to create a sealed wall that will allow us to fill that entire void later with foam. And here is the through hole fitting, and there's the hose going to the valve that the pump is attached to, and it's going out at the bottom of the transom. We cover the back subfloor with excess sheet metal that we had from a previous cut. We'll show you later the end result with the gas tank in there. So the subfloor stops at the live well to protect the fittings, but the subfloor has to continue into these voids. So we go ahead and we take some of those thinner sheets, bend them to fit, and it only needs to be bonded in so many places that are safe. Like right here on the subfloor, because we're going to be duct taping over all the overlapping edges, and that is what we're going to use to seal this in. Because once the foam is actually in here, the mushroom expands to fit, creates a mechanical bond, and that piece of aluminum will never go anywhere ever again. But there is the notion of filling gaps that the pour foam will push and leak through, creating a lot of problems for you later if you can't stop it. Normally, I would use gap filler, the foam, and that does work in a lot of cases. We'll still actually have to use that. But for the tight spots here that we can actually put and apply duct tape, we're going to apply duct tape. Not want to spoil too many things, but I just want to tell you the duct tape worked phenomenal. So I used that everywhere I could. In places I couldn't, I did use the regular foam gap filler. The entire theory behind making these elevated voids above the main floor is that water always likes to force itself to the main floor. And normally these boats, they pour the pour foam right onto the main floor with the voids right on the floor. So there's no elevated subfloor. So the water eventually just goes to the foam, degrades it, waterlogs it, and then we have gross damage with oxidation and pitting on the hull, and the boat performs way worse because it's just heavy from being waterlogged. But in theory, if we can fill this entire U-shaped void with foam that is elevated above the main floor, then all the water will just join to the main floor. We'll seal off the top deck, and the foam will just stay free and clear of water damage. More to come on this later in the series, but before we can even get to that part, the framing must go on. I wavered back and forth for a few days on whether or not I was just going to bring the deck and you were just going to sit right on the back deck, or if I was going to add seats and compartments underneath the seats, like the old style bass trackers. And really, there's a lot of value in those old designs. Maybe they weren't built really nice, maybe they were rushed, but the functionality of the design was actually really good. I chose to move forward with that design and recreate the bass tracker style seating. I have to deviate from my plan a little bit and cheat and weld a little bit more. But aside from that, most of this, 90% of it, can all be done with rivets and basic framing.
Livewell's in here, full 18 gallons, didn't have to trim any off, had just enough clearance on the bottom to make it all work. And pretty much the entire system is going to run very smoothly, except for the remote. We got to figure out where we're going to put that stupid thing. And we're going to, the kit, when we give you the kit, the back hatch, the rear facing hatch is the same size as the Livewell lid. We will not pour until we run conduits out of PVC. It's one of my favorite things to do. Hole here, run it through there, run it, and we'll be running those PVC pipes right through the bottom here. And that will give you wire, like leads to run wires, starter cables. We're really gonna try to channel all the wiring on this side because the console is going to be right here. We have to build the console. Well, these are some seats. I was going to put these in the Nitro, but they're just out there getting ruined. I'm going to put them in this boat. They actually fit this boat pretty nicely. This is Amazon, the cheap run-of-the-mill Amazon seats. I mean, this very much eerily reminds me of that bass tracker I restored eons ago. And this was how it was kind of laid out. If you get the deluxe kit, it does come with a rod locker lid. And if you see this, the opening is actually just pretty generous. I have 2 of these in the pond prowler and I fit 12 rods, 6 rods a piece. So it's really nice. It like fits perfectly with a little section here. If I was going to make this boat a tiller boat, which it could have gone that way, but instead of buying all the money for the tiller, I decided to run the console for once because people have been asking me to make a console. So you guys, there's just too much going on with here that messes that up. So this will just be an open area. So yeah, there really is not a much better layout for a simple conservative sub 16 foot John boat. It obviously was made to be a bass boat hull. There has to be enough room for all these things. There has to be an area to step up to get on top of the deck. There just has to be those things. You can't get around it.
The plan for these seats and the bases there is that all the batteries are going to go right underneath there. The trolling motor all the way on the left side, the cranking battery and the house battery in the middle, and underneath the driver's side, the battery charger plus whatever else will probably go there. This will be the only real main storage that we build like this, minus the actual hatches included in the kit for the front and the back. What makes all these compartments really strong is that we rivet the front and the back wall with very generous amounts of rivets right to the framing. The more the merrier. Now for the top. We need a way to mount the seats but also have them flip up so you can access what's underneath. We took a piece of the thick 090 sheeting, made our measurements, and then we just went and cut them out. You want to leave about a 1/4 inch gap or maybe more depending between the hatches. They will thicken up later on once we put EVA foam on top of them. Since this was kind of an on-the-fly idea, I went to the metal shop and purchased this hinge. It's not included in the kit, but it can be if you guys want it by popular demand. For the vertical surface, riveting the hinge to the wall was cake, but on top, we have to be careful. So we can either rivet from underneath, or we can just weld the hinge directly to these plates. For the record, this is completely doable with rivets. You would just have to rivet underneath out and coming out the top, and then you just grind down the part without actually messing up the mandrel, and then the foam will lay right over that. That's what I would have done, but because I had a welder, it's faster. We also have built from scratch lid builder kits where you can just make a random hatch like nothing out of any size with these brackets. But again, because I had some angle and it had the sheeting, I just went ahead and welded my own little hatch together. I needed one that was elevated anyways because the starter battery is going in the middle. Now, had I not been able to do this, I would have stuck the starter battery in the front deck where there's a giant void that I could put anything in there. But doing it this way simplifies everything much easier. We also have hat channel available for purchase, and we placed it underneath these panels to strengthen them since they are not sitting on an angled or tubed frame. And we use this template to mark perfectly around it because the screw holes for these seats will fit just conveniently right on each side of the hat channel. These seats, and I think most generic seats, universally use 1/4-20 hardware. So we got some 1/4-20 stainless that were long enough to penetrate through that into the seat. We go ahead and we secure that, and voila. I mean, at the very basis, we still got to add a strut so the seat can't accidentally bend out too far and break. But in the interim basis, I like it a lot. It's comfortable, not too far to the left, not too far center, not too high, not too low. It's a win. The one thing we're missing is the console. Now, if you get one of these boats out of somebody's backyard, they'll likely come with a console. Just try and make that thing work. But in the end, if you hate it, or it's inadequate, or if it's missing like this boat, I don't know where it went, you can either DIY one together like we're about to do now, or we do have an option for this exact same console as an order an item for the kit. I tried to make this one a little deep with some trendy lines, and it has varied thicknesses. That whole bended one piece is 063. I needed it to be thin enough to bend but strong enough to maintain most of it. And the back walls and that's actually 090, and the front walls are actually 1/8 inch. So it's a concoction, which is actually really strong. And I was obviously able to measure and piece together everything here, but because every boat is different, when you get this console, you will have 2-inch aluminum angle, and you'll be able to trim or move around and rivet to fit the console not only to the subfloor, but to the side of the hull. In this case, we have an elevated subfloor here that's going up the space of the ribs, and it's very easy just to use that to secure the console too. On the very top of it, way above the waterline, we do end up welding it on the one side. That's just because we could. When you get this console, it'll have like a 15 or 11 degree flange that will bend down the contour of the wall, and you can even tweak it a little bit, and you can just rivet the console right to the side of the hull. Might I also add that the console you get will not be made by me. Clearly, I'm push-pull making this thing together. It's ugly, and I had to do it on both sides so I could grind off the one side so it looks pro. You ever heard that saying, a grinder and paint will make you the welder you ain't? Well, okay, that's a very true statement. But the people that make these consoles are from High Shoals boats out of Georgia, and they do a fantastic job. They can actually TIG and do it correctly. So just know it'll be better quality than this one.
Back's all finished here. Minor tweaks here before that gets dropped in and installed. I held off on here. We got to run the conduits because they will go in here. Down there, we're going to install this very basic fish finder. I bought 3 of these a long time ago for like a screaming deal for rental boats because I had a launch of 3, so I got 3 of those. This is the compartments. We'll end up grinding the ends of the rivets down because we'll be turfing these in there. You won't be able to see those rivets. This is the bottom. We used our hat channel. We sell hat channel just like this. We'll probably include it in the Bass Boat Booster Kit for people who want to replicate this design. And then we'll probably end up moving these hinges up a little bit and gator matting this so it doesn't just slam on aluminum, it slams on an actual mat. It's just for comfort and just for vibration and all that stuff. We'll probably be doing that, but just right now, for the sake of design, everything is kind of loosely in here. And obviously on top of these plates will be turfed. And the only deviation where I really truly went off the line here is 1, I made that console, and then 2, I made this hatch because I had to elevate the hatch to make sure the starter battery is going on. I had these lithium batteries, Power Queen, again, awesome batteries. but you can't use lithium as a starter battery, so really we got a Group 24 lead acid starting battery. And because the terminals are so high, they sit right high with there, too easy to start a fire. So in the midst of making straps and tracks for those batteries to not ever move, we made a hatch that's elevated. Just kind of put it together real loosely. That's 090 on top of 1/8 inch angle with hat channel in the middle. And that's just because I know people will be stepping on this constantly to get up to the back deck. This will be under constant serious stress at any given time. And that will be here. I'm really happy with how this came out. I did this with all the sheets from the kit. I just, I seamed 2 pieces together right there and then everything else. And the front is all 1/8 inch plate on the 063 and then the back is 090 plate. But overall, the whole thing together is very solid. And the parts in the very front are the thicker parts they need. Now we're gonna move to the front deck, which is gonna be very easy because it's already built up.
So as far as rigging the console to the outboard and making that whole thing, I'm gonna do a separate video where we slow this a little bit more down and it's not so fast, but just briefly, showing you how we did this, pulled it through. We'll be going all over the main components, the rotary steering, the control box right there, the steering wheel, like in any of the accessories they actually mount to the console. That's all coming up in the next video, but for now we're gonna finish the framing onto the front. Now, unlike the back deck, I can use this entire front deck. It's already rigged out to serve exactly what I needed. It even has almost the exact hole size for this hatch. I just need to add a few more pieces on from the kit to retrofit this to make it good, and then it's perfect. You can template this a bunch of different ways, cardboard, construction paper, but I found the most superior templating material to be this Graphics Duralar. It is a clear plastic crinkle-free film that gives you exact measurements and templates. Comes in various sizes and thicknesses, which vary on price, but the thicker it is, the more stable and crinkle-free it becomes. With a sharp utility knife and some painter's tape, I now have a perfect outline for the front deck. And I can now see all the holes, all the hatch spaces, and all the lines I need to trace so that the panels I cut will be precise size that I need. Then it's just a matter of how well you cut out the lines for the template. For me, I just use a pair of scissors. I try to go as straight as I can, but if you want true precision, you're gonna have to lay it down flat and use a ruler and a utility knife. I use this stuff for decking and turf overlays for everything. It's the closest you're going to be able to get as a person to getting results on par with a professional scanner and CNC. Once your template is finished, go ahead and lay it out. I have 3 sheets stacked together that I will be cutting in series. So it doesn't matter that it's not one full sheet. Fact is, when I do cross framing, which I will be doing after these sheets are here, I can just bond these right to the hole and you'll never know that it wasn't one sheet. When we deck this thing later with HydroTurf, you'll see. But before we can secure the paneling, we'll have to retrofit the frame, run conduits, and pour in foam. Hey guys, be sure to check out all the Weekend Warrior Jumbo kits. They'll retrofit anything from a small 1436 all the way to a 1648 like this. And for any little oddball things like the Duralar, we have in our Amazon store. Between both of these platforms, we should be able to get you anything you need to complete your project. Check us out. Now let's get back to one thing I forgot to do that I now really regret. I thought it would just be easier and I would flow right through it later, and now I'm realizing it's going to be a major pain. Having to retrofit to somebody else's design is already bad enough. Having to retrofit to your own design after not seeing something is worse. And what we're going to have to do is make an above deck level conduit on the right side. It's the only way you'll be able to cleanly run all the control cables and the shifter cables and umbilical connection from the motor to the controller itself. Had I had the foresight to integrate it directly into the frame, I could have produced a riveted version and also have made it look more clean. But because it's going to get messy, I'm going to weld this. And then I'm going to have to clean that up and part it out, and hopefully I can rivet some of it. To rivet, it's going to be a lot more clean looking, and that's the advantage of rivets if you can do it on stuff that's not load bearing. The best scenario for me was to get a 3/4 piece of angle and just weld it directly to the gunnel. The gunnel is stupid and round, so I'm gonna have to put something else to make it look cleaner so it doesn't look like that. So after making the inner wall that will channel all the wiring with just a piece of angle, I now move to make a top piece out of just scrap aluminum. So this is what you have to do if you don't plan right. You have to do things like this, and you have to go to the metal shop and figure it out. But if you plan ahead accordingly, you should be able to use the sheet metal and either bend it or rivet it to a piece of angle and get better results than this. One thing I've always wanted to do, and I'm surprised that like the people who made budget boats like this now in the present don't do, well, maybe they do. Last time I checked, they didn't. But we're gonna put in some rod tubes, but we're not gonna put in a rod locker. That big blank side is going to have, I think, some Atwood, like rod holders you get from Walmart. That's gonna secure the rod butts, and the rods themselves will slide right in here. We did 3, but had to take the bottom one out because I ended up running a conduit there with angle. This boat has a subfloor and subwalls that go up each side, so I went ahead and just welded a piece of angle in there. Now we're going to actually make bottom conduit pieces like this that fit right in the corner of the subfloor and subwalls, but it'll have flanges on each side so you can actually rivet it to the floor and the wall. They make really good conduits. They're pretty low profile and out of the way, and you can run your major wiring through them. Alright guys, that's a wrap for this framing video. Let me know what you thought. Was this easier to follow? Do you see these mods and you look at them and you can be like, I can do that. That's not hard. And we got a bunch of other parts, all the rigging, and the painting, the turfing, the decking, and the final touches to make this thing go. Stay tuned.